everyone, and welcome to Season 1, Episode number 35 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches of 2020 with match number 16 on our list, which is the quote-unquote greatest wrestling match ever between Edge and Randy Orton from the WWE Backlash event held back on June the 14th. Now, if I was worried my street cred would be eliminated by including Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso as high on my list as I did, I think this match will maybe do even more damage to that. That said, this match is fantastic. It opens up a large debate on whether the pre-taped and retaped nature of this match, allows itself to be considered a pro wrestling match. And for that, I say absolutely it should be considered a pro wrestling match, and I'll tell you why. So one, we've had COVID in 2020, and everything has been thrown completely out the window because of that. We have cinematic matches that have become somewhat the norm. So, a match being pre-recorded and meticulously laid out and reshot at points, honestly, it really doesn't bother me. I'll go on by saying, in addition to that, this is something that pro wrestling has been using for forever. Look at old ECW with the clipping on television. There would be matches that were 30 minutes that got consolidated into 15 minutes for TV because the other 15 minutes of it were terrible. So it took out the bad stuff and put it in a tighter, better, for the viewer, TV package. And that's something that's been used in Japanese wrestling as well, right? Clipping has always been something in pro wrestling. Also, matches have been reshot before, right? We've seen, SmackDown spoilers where something gets screwed up and somebody, the same guys trot back out to do an angle where they essentially retape the finish. Again, that's nothing new. And finally, the kind of pre-rehearsed, part of this, well, I mean, it's been clearly stated. Look at something like Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Ricky Steamboat from WrestleMania 3. That match has come out as being, completely choreographed and rehearsed by the wrestlers before it happened. And it doesn't mean it's not an amazing match. And if that match can be held in such a high regard, why can't something like Randy Orton versus Edge, outside of the bias that people have, preconceived prior to watching the match? That's my 2 cents on it. This match, though, I mean, yes, it was hyped as the greatest wrestling match ever, which was, a little vomit-inducing. I personally thought that the tagline was just going to mean that they were initially going to do an angle where Orton does something and, punts Edge in the head and the match doesn't happen. That's what I thought, and I was actually quite surprised to see that wasn't the case and that this was, ended up being a 40-ish minute match instead. They, did kind of a unique way in presenting this, right? They had the Madison Square Garden mic drop from the ceiling. They had pre-recorded, Howard Finkel, having done previous introductions for both of these guys. Charles Robinson is the referee. He was in the old school bow tie and went over the rules prior to the match. Again, it gave it that different feel. Also, because this was in an environment with no real fans, they were able to experiment with some really cool, different camera work. And, I've mentioned this before, WWE gets a lot of, rightful criticism for their camera work, but they did some cool stuff here. There was a spot where Orton hit a superplex where they actually, clearly had the cameraman in the ring to kind of get a unique view of that really showed the impact. And again, if you have, fans, you're not going to have a cameraman in the middle of the ring while guys are wrestling, but that's something that they were able to do here, and it gave it a unique feel, and it was kind of cool. This match, though, is so nuanced, and again, if you or I or somebody that's a fan that's not a professional wrestler, we're given a pen and paper, and we're told to craft a wrestling match that we thought would be perfect or as close to it, we would take all of these little, ideas and put them all together for what we thought would, make this magnificent match. All of these little callbacks and these little tricks and things like that. That's what these guys did here. So the best example that I'll give you of just, storytelling that gets, extended throughout the course of the match is very early on they hit a spot where Edge hits a couple of arm drags, standard early wrestling match stuff, and he goes for a third, and he misses it. Orton kind of avoids it. Edge sells the neck, right? So obviously, coming back from his career-ending neck injury. So from there, though, Orton, does a head scissors to focus on Edge's neck. Edge tries to do like a headlock counter out of it and misses it. Misses the headlock completely, right? Which they establish is, Edge has some ring rust. Yeah, he was in the Royal Rumble. Yeah, they did the last man standing match that was really just a fight, right? But he hasn't really had a true wrestling match like this in 7-8 years. So why wouldn't he be rusty? They did a spot where Edge, ran off the ropes, and Orton did, a drop down, which is something that has no meaning in pro wrestling, right? It's the standard spot, the drop down, but he actually trips Edge up with it. And Samoa Joe, who was on commentary, was fantastic, basically just talking about how that's embarrassing, how that doesn't happen to pro wrestlers, how that's the intention of a drop down. But guys, we've seen it for decades upon decades, and guys just jump over the drop down, but Edge didn't because he's rusty. So it ended up leading to Edge having to get creative, because clearly Orton is wiping the mat with him from a wrestling standpoint, and he had to use some cat and mouse tactics to end up luring Edge or Orton back into the ring, only for him to finally hit that arm drag that he missed earlier, and he holds on to it in an arm lock because Orton has a bad shoulder from a match that these guys had years ago. So again, you had 10 minutes of wrestling, of story, of these nuanced little spots, all to go back to what they established at the start of the match. And again, it's just, on paper, it's brilliant, and they executed it so well. This match had some stuff that you're not going to see in a lot of WWE matches nowadays. There was a little bit of blood, right? They had Orton get, busted open, which they were able to do in a controlled environment that added to the drama a little bit. They played off spots. They had the last man standing match at WrestleMania, which I thought was atrocious. But Edge, developed his new head and arm choke finish in there. So, there was a spot where Orton went for the RKO and Edge countered it into that. And they ended up playing back into the finish of the match that we'll get into in a second. They did both of these guys' signature spots, but with little twists on them. So Orton does, kind of his signature Randy Orton backbreaker, where he kind of gets the guy in a reverse headlock and drops him across his back. Well, he did that, but he did it higher up on the neck because Edge has the bad neck. And commentary, which can often be a pain point, as a WWE viewer, we're so great at recognizing that and mentioning it on commentary, which again, because it's all, much more pre-rehearsed than a normal WWE match that you would see on live television, they have those notes and were able to make sure they came across to the viewer. There was, a sequence where Orton just, went into his zone that he does and, destroyed Edge on the floor, threw his head into the barricades, into the plexiglass that the fans are behind, dropped him on the announcer's table, into the steps, into the ring post. Again, Edge did an incredible job selling the neck. They went back in the ring, and Orton, went for his chin lock. So again, the chin lock is this typical, Orton move that he receives a lot of criticism for. It's that very WWE slow down pattern. But after all of the aggression, the chin lock made perfect sense because Edge has the bad neck that Orton just spent 5 minutes going over in a multitude of ways. They did a great spot where Edge countered out of it, only to be flung backward into the corner and hit neck first. Again, everything in this match was so focused and driven toward the story that they were trying to craft. There was a good spot where they did a double cross body where both guys were out with the referee counting 10 that they again smartly tied into the last man standing match at Mania with the 10 count. They did an extended sequence here that I loved where Edge kind of had to go outside of his wheelhouse a little bit to beat Orton, who has 7 or 8 more years of experience on top of Edge. When these guys met years ago, Edge was the veteran. Now with that lapse in Edge's in-ring action, Orton was kind of the veteran now, right? So Edge had to go deep into the playbook. He ended up using, a Christian spot where he kind of swings around in the corner and, does that up kick by swinging under the ropes. They went deep, into finishers from the past, which I thought was really cool. Edge kept countering the RKO, and Orton countered the spear and the execution and all of these moves. So they did angle slams and rock bottoms and pedigrees and, the crippler crossface. And again, all of this stuff of these moves that these guys have taken, countless times throughout the years that they were now trying to use to, defeat their opponent. And again, I thought it was really cool and really different. There was a big spot late in the match where, again, Edge went to the Christian playbook, tried for the diving sunset flip out of the corner, and Orton hit him with the RKO. So again, Edge, did the Christian tactic, did his research on that, but didn't do the research to see that that is a classic Orton Christian spot that Orton was well prepared for. He might not have been prepared for Edge for going to the Christian moves earlier, but that is one he can do in his sleep, and he can counter in his sleep because he's beaten Christian with it. And again, I just thought it was super, super cool. The finish here was great. Edge ended up getting the head and arm choke, that he used at Mania to defeat Orton. And then Orton, kind of distracted the referee, kneed Edge in the groin, hit the RKO, hit a punt, and that was all she wrote. So again, what I expected to happen, did happen just 40 minutes later, where, the greatest wrestling match ever, ended on a low blow, and Orton had to cheat his way through. That's the story that they told here. This feud's clearly not over. I'm recording this video, a couple of days after the 2021 Royal Rumble, where both of these guys, that was the story throughout the match. This match blew away my expectations. I thought it was pretty darn perfect in every way. And again, I understand the criticisms that people had against this match, but I do not agree with them in any way, shape, or form. I thought this match was beautiful. It was well crafted. It was nuanced, and it's everything I want out of a pro wrestling match. And given the limitations of COVID, I thought it gave them a really unique opportunity to put on something that, otherwise we wouldn't be able to see. There's no way they would have done a match exactly like this in front of a crowd. So again, COVID is what it is. Make the most of the opportunity you have to do something different, and that's what these guys did here. Of course, it's WWE. You can check it out on the WWE Network. Please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and follow on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.